We live in a world that often celebrates polish over passion. People rehearse their lines, practice their smiles, and try to sound just right. But when it comes to true communication that moves people, it's not the perfectly rehearsed lines that make the impact. It's the words that come from a place of deep, burning purpose. When you speak from purpose, you are speaking from your truth. You are drawing from your experiences, your beliefs, your values, and your pain. And there is something unmistakable about that energy. People may not always understand your journey, but they will feel your conviction. They will sense that what you're saying is not coming from a place of performance, but from a place of lived experience. That's when communication becomes powerful. That's when you begin to communicate with impact. Perfection is a trap. It makes you second guess your words. It convinces you that you're not ready, that you need one more degree, one more book, one more opportunity. Perfection silences too many powerful voices before they even get the chance to speak. But purpose doesn't care if you stutter. Purpose doesn't care if your voice shakes. Purpose will push you to stand up even when your knees are trembling. When you speak from purpose, you're not worried about how you look. You're focused on what you're here to give. And that shift in focus changes everything. Suddenly, your nerves shrink because it's not about you anymore. It's about the message. It's about the people who need to hear what only you can say in the way you can say it. That kind of speaking reaches beyond ears. It reaches hearts. We've all been in rooms where someone speaks flawlessly and we clap out of respect, but we don't remember what they said 5 minutes later. And we've been in rooms where someone spoke with raw emotion, with truth in their voice, and we hung onto every word. That's the difference between speaking to impress and speaking to impact. One is about image. The other is about intention. Purpose-driven communication isn't always pretty. Sometimes it's messy. Sometimes it's emotional. Times it's uncomfortable. But it's real. And people are starving for real. They don't want another sales pitch. They don't want another perfectly branded message. They want something that reminds them of their own story, their own strength, their own power. To speak from purpose, you have to do the inner work. You have to ask yourself, why does this matter to me? Why do I care so deeply about this message? What am I willing to risk to get it out there? When you find your answers, your words start to carry weight. They're no longer just sounds. They become a force. You don't need a script to speak from purpose. You need honesty. You need clarity. And you need courage. Because standing in front of people and offering them the truest parts of yourself is no small task. But it's where your greatest power lies. There's a fire that comes with knowing your purpose. That fire lights up your eyes, lifts your voice, and fills your presence with authority. Not the kind of authority that comes from titles or achievements, but the kind that comes from alignment. When your message aligns with your mission, people feel it. They trust it, and they're moved by it. In a noisy world, people don't need more perfect speakers. They need people with something real to say. They need voices that don't just echo what's popular. They need voices that cut through the noise with truth, urgency, and passion. That's what purpose brings to the table. It makes you unforgettable. You don't have to wait until you have all the answers. You don't have to wait until your delivery is flawless. If you know why you're speaking, if you're rooted in something bigger than your ego, then you're ready. Your voice might not be perfect, but if your heart is in the right place, your impact will be undeniable. There's a common mistake many people make when they step up to speaking. They try to present the highlight reel of their life. They talk about the wins, the breakthroughs, the shiny outcomes, the perfect image of success. But if you want to connect, really connect, you've got to go deeper than that. You've got to speak to the pain, not the perfection, because it's in the pain that people see themselves. Perfection is intimidating. It builds walls. When someone only shows their strengths, their victories, their polished image, the audience may clap, but inside they often feel detached. Why? Because most people are not sitting in their victories. They're sitting in their struggles. They're trying to find answers. They're searching for hope. And when you stand in front of them and pretend like you've had it all figured out from the beginning, you lose them. But when you speak from your scars instead of your trophies, something powerful happens. You become relatable, you become believable, and most importantly, you become human. It's not about glorifying the pain. It's about showing people that even through it, you kept moving, you survived, you learned, you grew. That gives people courage. That helps them believe that if you could make it through your valley, they can too. People aren't hungry for your perfection. They're starving for your honesty. Because in this world of curated images and filtered lives, honesty is rare. It's refreshing and it's real. When you speak to the pain, you give voice to what many people are afraid to say out loud. You name the quiet battles, the late night doubts, the inner struggles. You become the mirror someone else needed. It's easy to talk about the win once you've crossed the finish line. But real impact comes when you're willing to talk about the days you almost quit, the nights you cried yourself to sleep, the times you questioned everything. That's what makes your message unforgettable. That's what gives it depth. When you lead with pain, you build bridges. You stop becoming the expert on the pedestal and start becoming the alley beside them. And in that space, transformation happens. People don't need another guru. They need someone who understands, someone who's been there, someone who remembers what it's like to doubt your worth, to feel stuck, to want to give up. That understanding builds trust, and trust is the foundation of true influence. To speak to the pain, you must be willing to revisit it. You must be willing to tell the unfiltered version of your story. That takes courage. That takes vulnerability. But vulnerability is not weakness. It's power under control. It's the willingness to stand in front of people and say, here's what I went through. Here's what hurt. Here's where I failed. And here's how I kept going. You don't have to sensationalize your story. You don't have to dramatize it. Just tell the truth. Because truth, when spoken with sincerity, carries a resonance that no performance can match. People feel it in their bones. They remember how it made them feel. And that's what creates change. Not your perfect delivery, but your honest presence. Sometimes the most impactful thing you can say is, I've been where you are. Those 7 words can open hearts, soften resistance, and spark transformation. Not because you have all the answers, but because you're willing to walk beside someone in their journey. Not ahead of them, not above them, but with them. Every time you speak, you have a choice. You can dress up your words and try to impress, or you can strip them down and try to connect. If you choose connection, you'll find that people don't care if your voice shakes. They care if your words reach them. They care if your story sounds anything like their own. And the only way to make that happen is to go to the places most people avoid. The raw places, the broken places, the places where real transformation begins. When you speak to the pain, you offer healing without preaching. You offer hope without pretending. You offer your truth without needing to be the hero. You become the living proof that pain doesn't have to be the end of the story. It can be the beginning of the message that sets someone else free. Words are powerful, but only when they create a vision. Too often, Speakers rely on facts, data, and complex explanations to make their point, forgetting that the human mind doesn't respond to information. It responds to imagery. When you speak to be remembered, you must stop writing essays with your mouth. You must start painting pictures with your words, because people don't carry paragraphs with them after you're gone. They carry images. The most unforgettable communicators don't talk about ideas. They show you those ideas. They create moments in your mind. They use language that takes the audience somewhere. You can hear their words, but more importantly, you can see what they're saying. That's how connection happens. That's how messages become memories. Because the brain is wired to retain stories, not statistics. It locks onto scenes, emotions, and moments, not lists or lectures. Think about the speeches you remember. It's probably not because someone laid out a perfect three-point argument. It's because they said something that made you feel something. Maybe they told you about the time they stood on the edge of failure, or the moment they looked into their child's eyes and made a life-changing decision. Maybe they described what it felt like to walk away from everything they knew, uncertain but determined. You didn't just hear it, you saw it, you felt it, and it stayed with you. That's the power of painting pictures. To paint a picture with your words, you have to go beyond surface level storytelling. It's not enough to say, I was scared. What kind of scared? Was your throat tight? Were your palms sweating? Was your mind racing like a train you couldn't stop? When you bring detail, you bring dimension. You allow the audience to step into your shoes and experience the moment with you. And when they can see it, they can believe it. And if they can believe it, they can trust you. Painting pictures means slowing down your message long enough to make it real. Instead of saying, it was a tough time, describe what that time looked like. Were you sitting in a cold room, staring at a wall, wondering how things fell apart? Was it 3 a.m. and you were wide awake with tears on your pillow, hoping nobody heard? When you describe the scene, the room, the tension, the moment, it becomes more than a story. It becomes an experience for your audience. Some speakers think more words mean more value, so they rush through thoughts, piling paragraph after paragraph on their listeners. But more words don't equal more impact. In fact, too many words drown the message. The most vivid and gripping moments are often wrapped in simplicity. One powerful image can hit harder than 100 clever sentences. One well-told story can leave a deeper mark than a mountain of facts. Your job isn't to fill the air. Your job is to frame the scene. Instead of dumping data, give people something they can visualize. Don't just say someone was generous. Show the moment they gave their last dollar to a stranger. Don't just say you were determined. Let them see the night you stayed up rewriting your plan, your eyes red, your hands shaking, but your heart steady. That is how you let the audience into your world. Great communication is a form of transportation. It moves people, not just emotionally, but mentally. You take them from where they are and bring them into your reality. You guide them through your past, your passion, your purpose. And you do that by sketching every word like a stroke of a brush on canvas. Your tone, your pace, your pauses, they're all part of the picture. And the clearer the picture, the stronger the connection. When you speak in paragraphs, people hear you. When you speak in pictures, people feel you. They don't just take notes. They carry your message in their memory. And when it's real to them, it becomes something they can act on, something they can share, something they won't forget. That's the difference between delivering information and creating transformation. One teaches. The other transcends. In a world overflowing with noise, silence is power. In communication, most people obsess over what to say, how to say it, and how much to say. They fill every second with sound, believing that more words mean more value. But the truth is, words don't carry their full weight until they are wrapped in silence. Silence gives your message shape, tension, and gravity. It sharpens the edges of your words like a blade. It's not the filler between ideas. It's the force that gives those ideas space to breathe, to land, and to settle. Most speakers are afraid of silence. They treat it like a mistake or a sign of uncertainty. The moment things get quiet, they rush to fill the space, to keep the energy high and the rhythm moving. But the greatest communicators know that silence is not the enemy. It's a tool. It's a signal. It's a way to command attention without ever raising your voice. When used with intention, silence pulls people in. It makes them lean forward. It creates anticipation, tension, curiosity. It makes every word that follows carry more weight. When you speak and then pause, you send a message. This matters. You give your audience a moment to absorb what you've just said. You let your message echo in the space. That silence becomes a mirror, reflecting the words back to the listener and giving them room to feel, to reflect, to respond internally. Without that pause, even the most powerful statement can get lost in the noise. With it, even a simple truth can feel profound. Silence is also where confidence lies. A speaker who can pause without panicking is a speaker who is in control. They're not rushing to be heard. They're not desperate to impress. They trust the power of their message. They trust that their audience can sit in the space with them without needing constant stimulation. That level of presence commands respect. It creates a rhythm that's impossible to ignore. Think about a moment in a movie when a character delivers a single, unforgettable line and then says nothing. That pause makes you sit with it. It heightens the emotion. It makes you replay those words in your mind. It's not the dialogue that makes the scene great. It's the silence that follows. That's the same principle you bring into speaking when you learn to use silence with intention. Silence is not just about pausing between sentences. It's about creating moments. Moments where the message settles deeper. Moments where the emotion thickens. Moments where the audience has no choice but to sit with the truth. You don't need to fill every second. You need to shape the seconds. And silence is one of the most precise tools you have for that. In silence, your presence speaks louder. The audience watches your posture, your expression, your energy. They listen more closely because they don't know what's coming next. And that unknown, that space where sound has yet to return, holds their attention in a way that constant speaking never could. You become unpredictable. You become powerful because you're not just speaking. You're orchestrating an experience. Silence also allows you to feel the room. When you pause, you can observe how your message is landing. You can sense the energy shift. You can see whether people are with you or drifting. That feedback is invaluable. It lets you adjust. It gives you the space to breathe, to listen, to respond intuitively rather than mechanically. Speaking without silence is like playing music with no rests. It becomes flat, relentless, overwhelming. But when you include silence, you introduce rhythm, contrast, dynamics. Every impactful speaker knows how to control tempo. They know when to raise their voice, when to slow down, and when to stop completely. That stop is never empty. It's charged. It's where the truth echoes the loudest. It's where the emotion lingers. It's where your message plants itself into the minds and hearts of your listeners. Silence is not the absence of sound. It's the presence of meaning. It is a deliberate space where the audience is allowed to feel your words instead of just hearing them. It is where truth settles, where reflection happens, where emotion gets a seat at the table. When you speak and then stop, just for a second longer than expected, you create a ripple, a moment of resonance. A moment people remember. The end of your message is not the end of your impact. Too many people close their speech or presentation like it's a chapter in a book. Neatly wrapped, safely summarized, respectfully ended. But great communicators don't conclude, they ignite. They don't just say thank you and walk off. They leave people stirred, challenged, and ready to do something. That's the difference between a conclusion and a call. A conclusion wraps things up. A call opens something up in your audience. When you speak, you are not just delivering ideas. You are delivering energy, possibility, and direction. The final moments of your message are the most emotionally charged. That's when the audience is fully with you. That's when the emotions you've built, the truths you've revealed, and the connection you've earned are all at their highest point. And yet, that's when many speakers pull back. They shift into summary mode. They start reviewing what they've said. They settle instead of soaring. But the last 5% of your message should be the most intentional part of the entire journey. A conclusion is passive. It tells people what they heard. A call is active. It tells people what they must do now that they've heard it. A call doesn't let the message stay in the room. It pushes it into action. It challenges the listener to think differently, speak boldly, act bravely, or change something in their life. It hands the baton to the audience and says, now it's your turn. That's not a summary. It's a transfer of power. You're not just trying to be remembered. You're trying to be a catalyst. You're trying to turn words into motion. That means you can't be content with applause. Applause is a sign of appreciation, but movement, change, that's the sign of impact. And that only comes when your final words carry weight, urgency, and clarity. When you end with a call, you are making it personal. You're no longer just speaking to a group. You're speaking to the individual sitting in the third row who hasn't believed in themselves in months. You're speaking to the business owner who's been sitting on an idea for years. You're speaking to the student who's one step away from quitting. A real call finds people where they are and invites them to where they could be. But a call must be clear. Vague inspiration fades fast. You can't just say, go be great or make a difference. You have to tell them what that greatness looks like, what the difference requires. Speak to their hesitation. Speak to their doubts. Then challenge them to rise anyway. Your voice becomes the moment they replay in their mind when fear creeps back in. You become the spark they remember when they're at the edge of giving up. That's the privilege and the responsibility of being the one with the mic. The call doesn't have to be grand. It has to be real. Sometimes the most powerful call is the simplest one to speak up, to forgive, to start, to try again, to let go, to believe. But whatever it is, it must ask for something. It must stretch the audience. It must leave them different than when they walked in. That is how messages outlive the moment. Ending with a call means you believe your message matters enough to ask something of people. You're not just hoping they liked it. You're daring them to live it. You're telling them, I didn't come here to entertain you. I came here to wake something up inside you. And when that's your posture, the tone of your ending changes. You speak from a deeper place. Your words don't trail off. They take flight. They leave residue. They echo. People crave direction more than they crave inspiration. Inspiration feels good. Direction creates movement. When you end with a call, you give that direction. You make the message theirs to carry. And they don't just walk away with a quote. They walk away with a mission, a reason to act, a reason to take the next step, a reason to remember you, not just as someone who spoke, but as someone who lit a fire inside them and then pointed to the door they were meant to walk through communication is not about sounding perfect. It's about being purposeful. It's not about showing off what you know. It's about showing up with what you've lived. When you speak from a place of deep conviction, when you tell the truth of your pain, when you craft stories that create vivid, lasting images, when you master the silence between the words, and when you challenge your audience to take action rather than simply applaud, you no longer just speak, you lead. You no longer just inform. You transform, because communication with impact isn't measured by the sound of your voice in the room. It's measured by the echo it leaves in the hearts of those who heard it. So when it's your turn to speak, speak like it matters, because it does.